Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Syrian regime's live bullets kill Arab League initiative. Saudi-backed Bahraini forces attack thousands of mourners. And Israel blocks the freedom waves from entering besieged Gaza. Mosaic, world news from the Middle East, begins now.
بالرصاص الحي قتل النظام السوري مبادرة الجامعة العربية في جمعة الله أكبر.
It is with live bullets that the Syrian regime killed the Arab League initiative on a Friday dubbed God is Greater, and one after the other, the terms of the agreement collapsed. So instead of stopping the killing, this killing machine has claimed 18 lives so far, raising the death toll to 40 since Tuesday, when the Damascus regime announced it agreed to the Arab initiative.
The
blessed Eid al-Adha begins tomorrow for the Arab and Muslim world. As for Syria, it enters a new chapter after its regime aborted the Arab League's initiative, which is probably this regime's last chance.
Verifying the intentions of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was their goal, and the result was unrelenting killings, crackdowns, and arrests by al-Assad's brigades. After the Arab League announced Damascus's agreement to the Arab Initiative, which calls for an immediate end to the violence and release of detainees, opposition members believed al-Assad's regime would allow them to peacefully demonstrate. They called their Friday the Friday of God is Greater than all those using force. So they took to the streets of Syrian cities and towns in large numbers, but faced an unprecedented security deployment and encircled mosques. According to activists, the capital, Damascus, looked like a military base, as massive protests were held in the towns and villages of its countryside. These are scenes of a protest in Sakba, in the countryside of Damascus, that was subjected to a barrage of gunfire by al-Assad's brigades. Homs receives the Assad, or Lions, share of the massacres every day, but its residents refused to surrender to the security brigades. So they held massive protests across most neighborhoods and cities, chanting for the execution of the president and demanding international protection. And al-Hasaka province also witnessed large protests, most notably in al-Kamishli in Amuda. Participants confirmed their commitment to continue the revolution until the downfall of the regime. In al-Darbasiyah, the resignation of prominent ruling Ba'ath Party member Mohammed Ahmad al-Bikr was the top headline.
I have only one reason, and it is that too many people are silent and scared. But God willing, with this change and with this power and this presence, and by coming together as one people, we will be able to end the period of the al-Assad family existence among us.
As for Aleppo, the Salah al-Din neighborhood was subjected to tear gas in an attempt to prevent protests. Activists posted videos online showing a large protest in Tal Rifat, where anti-Assad chants were heard. Hama also witnessed large demonstrations amid heavy security presence and encircled mosques. However, that did not prevent protesters from marching as usual. The southern province of Daraa witnessed demonstrations. The most notable was in Sanamin, where this video was filmed. Protests swept the provinces of Deir ez-Zor and Idlib. Activists said over 110 marches were launched from different sites, despite the bad weather.
Amid the continued crackdown, the Syrian Ministry of the Interior gave what it called gunmen 1 week starting this Saturday to surrender and give up their weapons as part of general amnesty.
In Bahrain, Saudi-backed regime forces have attacked thousands of people out mourning the death of yet another protester. Regime forces attacked mourners marching to the landmark Pearl Square in the capital, Manama. Huge crowds gathered in the nearby town of Sanabis for the funeral of 70-year-old Ali al-Adehi. He was attacked by regime forces on Wednesday night while protesting against the al-Khalifa rule. He succumbed to his injuries several hours later. Bahrain has been rocked by a revolution since mid-February. Forces loyal to the ruling regime have killed dozens of anti-regime protesters. The al-Khalifa regime was founded with the help of Britain in 1820. In Jordan, people have come out calling for the end of the hereditary monarchy. The protesters took to the streets in the south of the country after Friday prayers. The protesters also called for an end to government corruption. Similar protests led to the resignation of Jordan's prime minister last month. Demonstrators have since continued to pour onto the streets, this time hinting at a change within the monarchy itself. Well, the G20 summit has wrapped up in Cannes in France. Ramin Mazaheri is our correspondent there, and he's been following developments for us. Let's find out what he has to say. Ramin, many prominent leaders are faulting the G20 for coming in by promising bold moves, but only leaving with, well, promises and more talk. Is that how it looked?
Well, yeah. This is not one of your G20 meetings that is just a roundtable discussion. They have to come up with concrete steps. The market demands it, and they have. They are leaving now, and they are leaving with an action plan that they say is going to kickstart growth and rebalance trade. However, many analysts are saying that basically what it boils down to is if you have money, please spend it. That sounds like a simplification, but it's really not. What they have is they have basically a gentleman's agreement among G20 countries for surplus nations to boost internal demand, and that'll smooth out some trade imbalances. So that's countries like China, Germany, Indonesia, South Korea. If they can start selling some more goods, other countries can sell them to these countries, and that's going to smooth things out. However, many people are saying this is begging. This is not a concrete plan because these are discretionary measures. They're going to be done by each nation. They're going to be done in their own interests. They're not going to be coordinated. Who knows if they'll be taken undertaken at all. So this is really giving a lot of credence to people who say that this G20 is really a lot of talk. I think it's very telling to talk about what the G20 did not accomplish that they wanted to. There's no financial transaction tax. There's no currency reform. There's no teeth to more financial regulations. Those are the current issues, and then we have permanent issues of getting more aid to developing countries. Jobs, of course. These are something that's always there. But I think you can't say that the G20 is all talk because what they don't say is important. Of course, they do say things. And what did they say? Well, what dominated the summit here was the Greek referendum. I think a lot of people are going to say that the G20 showed their true colors by, without hesitation, telling the Greek people, we don't care what you think. It's our way or the highway. And I think that's going to, in the future, people are going to say, well, it's clear where the G20 sympathies lies. It's with themselves, with the fellow rich countries.
أفاد متحدث باسم الجيش الإسرائيلي للBBC بأنه تم الاستيلاء على السفينة.
An Israeli army spokesman told the BBC that they have seized the 2 ships headed to Gaza and are now towing the ships to the Israeli Ashdod port. The Israeli army's chief of staff ordered the interception of the Irish and Canadian ships. The ships are carrying activists on board who are trying to break the Israeli siege imposed on Gaza. The Israeli army said the activists on board the 2 ships continued sailing toward Gaza, ignoring orders to divert their direction or to unload the ships either in Israel or Egypt.
أو تفريغ حمولة السفينتين في إسرائيل أو مصر.
The Irish and Canadian ships set sail from Flotilla port in southwestern Turkey. Their destination is the Gaza Strip, and their goal is to break the Israeli siege imposed on Gaza since Hamas ascended to power. Ships are carrying a symbolic shipment of money and medicine by the 27 activists on board.
The cameras are just coming in now because we are trying to keep things quiet so we don't draw attention and put the Turkish authorities in a difficult position. This is why we left on a pleasure vessel.
The U.S. announced it received guarantees from Turkey that its navy would not escort the two ships. Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan earlier announced that the Turkish navy would escort humanitarian flotillas to Gaza and that Israel can't be trusted.
We just breached international waters, so
We just breached international waters. I'm very happy. I expect the Israeli Navy to board the ship at some point on the way to the Gaza Strip. I'm not very fearful, and I feel peaceful, and this should be the case because we are a peaceful flotilla on our way to end the siege.
This brings back to memory the Marmara incident in which 9 Turkish activists were killed on board the ship by the Israeli army's gunfire. The Marmara was headed to the Gaza Strip last spring as part of what was known as the Freedom Flotilla.
Meanwhile, deposed Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh commended the Irish and Canadian ship's mission to break the siege imposed on the Gaza Strip. Haniyeh said that the lesson is learned by trying.
From here, we would like to send our high regards to those expressing solidarity with us and tell them that their message has been delivered, whether they made it or not, because they're exposing the occupation.
Shimon Peres also raised the issue of Iran during a state visit yesterday in Cyprus. Here's what he had to say.
The world has to stop Iran for becoming a greater and greater danger for every country, a terrible place, supporting war and blood and hatred and death. The best way will be if the international community will exercise its responsibility and its commitment.
Well, if the Israeli government does decide to bomb Iran, it will have the support of the majority of the Israeli public, but just barely. According to a poll published this week in the Haaretz newspaper, 41% said that they support an Israeli attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, but 39% oppose such a move. The poll also surveyed both Jews and Arabs about whether they trust Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Ehud Barak on the issue of Iran. Here the answer was pretty clear-cut. 52% said that they do, while 37% say that they do not. Well, for his part, Republican presidential contender Rick Perry is promising to back Israel if it decides to attack Iran. Perry pledged to support Israel unconditionally, whether overtly or covertly, to ensure the state's security. The Texas governor said, quote, "We cannot afford to allow a madman in Iran to get his hands on nuclear weapons." Perry's comments come as U.S. President Barack Obama urged heightened sanctions on the Islamic Republic ahead of the IAEA's expected report on Iran's nuclear program due out next week. And joining me now from our Tel Aviv studio to discuss a possible Israeli strike on Iran is Middle East analyst Dr. Ronan Giesing.
Good evening, Ariel, to you and to our loyal viewers around the world.
Good evening to you, Dr. Giesing. The speculation, as you know, is rampant that Prime Minister Netanyahu is perhaps attempting to garner support for an attack on Iran. But it seems, frankly, pretty strange to many analysts that the public is hearing about this. Is this an unusual thing?
Yeah, to an extent, yes, it is unusual. There are a couple of issues in the realm of national security in Israel that have been discussed in the past and today only among a few people who are. It's their responsibility. This the head of security services, the head of the military, the IDF, the chief of the IDF, and the defense minister. I would say, you know, from my experience, about 15 to 20 people are involved in on such issues. But in the past, you know, and they have their differences. In the past, they had their differences. They had the differences on critical issues like nuclear ambiguity, like striking nuclear facilities, you know, in 1981, according to foreign reports in 2009. But everything remained inside the system. In other words, this is not something where the public can make a sound judgment. This is where the expert, even when they disagree among themselves, keep things tight inside. In other words, you have to run a tight ship on several critical issues, and that has been breached. I think what happened is that the rules of the game have changed. Maybe because the media is all pervasive today, maybe because within the system itself, and I don't know because I'm not in the system right now, the basic, I would say, rules of the game, the trust that you have changed.
Today, Iran marks the Day of Countering International Arrogance, which coincides with the anniversary of the 1979 storming of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran by Iranian students. During a speech on the anniversary, the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Saeed Jalili, said that Iran possesses documents implicating the U.S. administration in terrorist activities. Jalili added that the documents, which Tehran will present to the international community, show that Washington has directed and supported terrorist groups in an attempt to target certain nations in the region.
The U.S. Embassy in Tehran plays host to a scene that repeats itself every year on the anniversary of its seizure by Iranian students. The protests are usually attended by students from various schools and universities. The anniversary has become part of the revolution, and that is why Tehran marks it as a national event open to all people. In the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution, the embassy has become known as the Den of Espionage, and its anniversary is marked as the Day of Countering International Arrogance.
Although we weren't here in 1979, we are here now, and we will defend the Imam's values and the objectives of the revolution.
The ones who stormed the embassy were our fathers, and we will take a leading role in any future action.
This year's anniversary comes under different circumstances. Tehran's politicians are determined to open a new front to counter Washington. The Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Saeed Jalili, has opened the U.S. terror files before the nation. Tehran has mobilized its intelligence agency and says it possesses 100 documents linking the U.S. to terrorism.
Today, the U.S. relies on terrorist activities to reach its illegitimate targets. Therefore, the UN must take necessary measures to pursue the U.S. legally and punish it for its terrorist activities.
مطلب استبقته طهران بخطوة وهي تكلف مندوبها في الأمم المتحدة. In a preemptive move, Tehran delegated its special envoy to the UN to submit the Iranian documents to the UN Secretary General in a bid to rally support among members of the Security Council, a mobilization that Iran doesn't expect much from, considering how the international community operates. However, Iran says its main objective is to undermine Washington's credibility, which is being questioned today in light of the political mobilization in the region and the Occupy Wall Street protests.
We are living in the period of Great Jihad, which requires us to stand firmly against America.
32 years have passed, and the embassy is still one of the confrontation hubs between Tehran and Washington. It has become known as Iran's second revolution. Tehran picked today, which marks its students' seizure of the U.S. Embassy more than 3 decades ago, to engage Washington in a new showdown. Iran's intelligence agency will be the key player in the new political game with Washington. With this, Iran wants to chart the real path of its revolution by dismissing allegations targeting its regime. Nur al-Diguer, Al-Alam, Tehran.
Tens of thousands of youths of the peaceful Yemeni revolution participated on a Friday they called "Remaining Peaceful is Our Choice" in Sana'a and 17 other cities. Participants renewed their demand for changing the regime of the Yemeni president and for his prosecution. They also confirmed their rejection of any political settlement that grants the president immunity from legal prosecution. On the other hand, supporters of President Ali Saleh gathered in Sabayin Square on a Friday they called "Yemen is everyone's responsibility." They renewed their commitment to what they called constitutional legitimacy.
خيارنا السلمية تأكيد جديد من شباب اليمن.
Remaining peaceful is our choice. The youth of Yemen once again confirm that their revolution is peaceful and assert their rejection of violence. As usual in al-Satine Square in Sana'a, massive crowds, young and old, women and children, gather to express their desire to topple the regime of the Yemeni president and for his prosecution. Marches by the youth of the revolution were intensified in the past few days, but Fridays still attract the largest crowds. They pray, repeat their chants, and call for the resolution of their revolution. They also renewed their rejection of any political settlement that grants Saleh and his regime's figureheads immunity from legal prosecution.
السبعين يرتضيه أنصار صالح لهم ميدانا.
Al-Sabi'in has lent itself to Saleh's supporters and has served as their square since the spark of the revolution demanding Saleh's downfall. This time they gather under the banner, Yemen is everyone's responsibility. They announce their loyalty to Saleh and cling to what they call constitutional legitimacy. In Taiz, which has witnessed bloody days and violent confrontations, the youth gather in their Freedom Square, mourn their dead, and reject granting immunity to the one they say is the killer of the town's residents. From Saada to Aden and from Al-Mahara to Hudayda, the squares of change sing the same chants and yearn for freedom and the establishment of a new Yemen. Across Yemen, these crowds watch and wait for the outcome of the Gulf and international action, following indications by the ruling party and government that the Gulf Initiative will soon be implemented. The opposition says it wants action, not words.
On the security level in Iraq, 41 members of al-Sahwa, or the Awakening, were martyred or injured this morning in a twin attack southwest of Bakuba.
A source at the Diyala Health Department said 6 Sahwa members were martyred and 35 others were injured this morning when a terrorist strapped with an explosive belt blew himself up in a gathering of Sahwa members. They were waiting in line to receive their paychecks at the headquarters of the 1st Division of the 18th Army's Battalion in the area of al-Adham, west of the city. For its part, Sahwa forces in Diyala province accused the al-Qaeda terrorist network of being behind the attack.
The Sahwa official in the province, Sami al-Khazraji, said all indications confirm that al-Qaeda is behind the attack, adding that his members will continue to pursue the al-Qaeda network and its allies until they are completely eliminated. In Basra, the local government believes that members of Saddam's Ba'ath Party are responsible for yesterday's bombings, in which 40 people were martyred or wounded.
Basra Governor Khalaf Abdel Samad confirmed in a statement that the latest bombings are a clear indication of the heinous terror that's targeting the democratic process in Iraq, vowing to pursue the perpetrators and their supporters. During a meeting with the UN Secretary-General's envoy and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, the Council of Ministers General Assembly discussed the possibility of expediting the expulsion of members of the Halq organization before the end of the year.
For its part, the Iraqi government confirmed that its decision to expel the organization's members before the end of the year is final.
With the participation of the UN Special Envoy and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, as well as European ambassadors, a special meeting was held today at the Council of Ministers General Assembly to discuss the implementation of Council Resolution number 117 for the year 2011, calling for the expulsion of the al-Qaeda organization from Iraq by the end of the year. The Prime Minister's advisor said the decision is irrevocable and that any extension to the organization's presence hinges on the implementation of the exit mechanism.
Despite taking quick, suitable, and adequate measures with regards to this decision, recommendations will be referred to the Council of Ministers to look into moving or extending the decision of the Council.
For his part, the UN Special Envoy expressed the international community's commitment to finding a solution to this issue while considering the Iraqi government's decision. He indicated that the United Nations is ready to contribute if needed. He stated that important meetings will be held on this issue after Al-Eid to discuss an exit strategy for members of the organization.
لمناقشة آلية خروج عناصر تلك المنظمة.
The situation, as is not satisfactory, neither to Camp Ashraf residents, nor to the government, nor to the international community. Therefore, we will discuss the process to solve this problem and find a third country to host them.
It is worth mentioning that the former dictatorship ensured that the organization's presence in Diyala province encompasses over 3,000 members. It seems the issue of the new Iraqi camp, or what is known as al-Ashraf camp, will soon be resolved in the face of the Iraqi government's determination to implement its decision and the UN's readiness to offer all forms of support and aid. From Baghdad, Saidi Ghazala, Al Iraqiya.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincote Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs, programs which connect you to the world.